Hello everybody, I hope everybody is well, and I'd like to welcome you to the Women of Rosendin Board of Directors Roundtable. And what this is a roundtable discussion with our Board of Directors and specifically the women that sit on our board right now. And you know, I'm really excited about who we have on our board. We've got a magnificent board that comes from all different parts of the industry, but most importantly, starting in about 2020, we added Dee and then we added Axelle. And these two individuals come from different parts of the industry. They're not directly out of the construction industry. And that brings a really interesting dynamic to our board. And then the fact that they're very accomplished women in their fields. So we're very fortunate to have them on our board. And this is all moderated by Angie Hart. You know, Angie's been with us from day one of her career, and she's been a strong leader for us. And it's very exciting to have all of these very dynamic women that have a huge impact on Rosendin's future and present, to have them on a roundtable to talk to everybody about what it means and how it affects the industry. This is really a great time, and I'm very excited for this. So I thank both of them for taking the time to do this, and Angie to moderate this. You know, Dee and Axelle, we bring in, you know, a couple of women to a board that have been predominantly, you know, old white males for as long as I've been in this business. And we've got two very strong women who have led their industry, like I said. Dee on the engineering side, working with ABB, working in the aerospace industry, working on switchgear and apparatus and specifically controls. Extremely strong individual in that industry. It connects with our industry, being the electrical and the electrical engineer in her. She has changed the way we think. She's challenging. She's a very, very strong personality, and I really appreciate everything she's done for me personally and for Rosendin. Axelle, she comes from technology. She works in the cyber security business right now. She comes from a long history of technology and mainly strategies, and working in the past as a consultant to companies like McAfee, Intel, and strategies. We're so fortunate, you know, we didn't, you know, as we do at Rosendin, we don't want to meet the requirements by industry. We want to meet the intent, and we've done a really good job, and we're very fortunate. So, you know, hopefully you enjoy what we have here, you get something out of it. Thank everybody again to take the time to talk about the future of Rosendin. We are becoming more diverse, and we're making sure that we're getting the right people in the right place to help us transform into the next decades and next century of Rosendin. So thank you all for everything you do, and I hope you enjoy this roundtable.
So we're going to dive right into the questions. Tell us a little about yourself and what brought you to becoming a board member for us. Dee?
Yeah, so I live in North Carolina. I have half my time in North Carolina on the shore and half my time in Atlanta. So it's a real contrast of environments. I've been married for 32, almost 33 years. I have two grown children. We're both active professionals, and you know, I have a couple of engineering degrees which I've utilized throughout my career. And what brought me to Rosendin was I was in an environment where I had actually retired from work. It was my second retirement. And as you can tell, having done it twice and gone back, I'm really crappy at retiring, as it turns out. So, and I retired because the company that I was with had been acquired, and it was going through a real cut mode. It was all about how do we improve the bottom line. And while I've gone through those business cycles, I really wanted to be part of a company where I could help them grow and really look at how they could expand a really good foundation that they already had. So when I got the call from the recruiter to go in to meet the Rosendin board, I just loved the team. I thought it was a very humble leadership team and one that I could really see being very successful. And with the culture of the company, it really, you know, resonated with me in terms of what I wanted to be able to contribute going forward.
Awesome. Axelle?
I'm good. So I'm Axelle. I live in the Bay Area on the peninsula in Mountain View with my 14-year-old daughter. I come from a pretty international background. I was born in Canada. I was raised in France. My dad is half Russian, half French. My mom is half Italian, half French. I'm Jewish, Protestant, Catholic. So creates a bit of a messy background. But why I joined Rosendin board, actually, the past 15 years I've been advising tech companies, mostly up and down the valley, and their boards. I had tremendous fun doing that, but tech is a little limited and can be very insular. So first I joined boards of nonprofits, and then when I got a call, same thing, about a Rosendin board looking for a new member, and a similar experience. The team was so collegiate, collaborative, working together. The leadership team was smart and wanted to really keep pushing the company for growth and a good culture. It was such a great match.
Well, it's great to have you guys on the board. Thank you. What excites you about being on our board of directors? I think you kind of touched on that a little bit, but do you guys have anything else to add about that?
I think just, I've just had my anniversary here this week. It's been 3 years on the board for me. And I can just tell you from the minute I walked in, which was during COVID, so it was an interesting time to say the least, to where we are today, I've just seen so much growth in the business, not only, financial growth, but really a level of maturity that has just expanded the professionals both on the executive committee and on the board themselves. And so to me, that's very fulfilling to be part of that journey with the board and with the executive committee.
Yeah, I agree. Very similar. I love to see actually the impact we have as board members, how welcoming the leadership team is to get different feedback, different perspective. So it's been a great collaboration.
So we talk about the glass ceiling, and what can you talk about that are barriers that you've had in your career, Axelle, that are around like the glass ceiling or other things that you've broken through?
Yeah, and we've had an interesting discussion during the board today about that. The glass ceiling is still very present. We talk about it. A lot of people think, oh, it's not there. But the number of times I've been told, you're a woman, you can't possibly be a leader. Or you're a mother, you should be home with your kids. And most women I talk to in leadership position have faced that issue. That being said, I think it's good news. It's one person in 1,000, all right? They can create a lot of difficult situation for a lot of women, but it's a minority, and I think with all the cultural changes we're all driving, that minority is shrinking. The second piece is when someone has such a bias, you can't really change them. It's the way they are. So find your people, find your group, and it can be sometimes within the same company, just a different area where people are inclusive, wants to see different opinion, value you as a person. So it's still there, but it's a minority shrinking, and don't get bogged down. There are so many opportunities out there.
Yeah, I think I was telling you guys earlier, somebody gave me a paperweight that I have on my desk that is literally a piece of glass that's broken, and it says you've broken the glass ceiling. It's kind of cool.
That's a great one.
Axelle, what a trait of emotional intelligence do you see yourself leveraging most?
Yeah, to me, I would say empathy and curiosity. I work a lot on, how to define a strategy and then how to execute it. And people have strong differences of opinion. Like, don't talk politics or religion or business, it's a bit the same, right? But if you really try to understand where they're coming from, if they have an opinion, there is a reason behind it. Then you'll build a much bigger, better picture of the problem relative to the strategy, or how do we make it happen, and it will make us all more stronger. Yeah. So don't get anchored remain curious about the people around you.
Dee, how has your leadership style evolved from the day-to-day when you started to as you grew as a leader?
Well, day to day as I started, I had to do a lot more, right? So, just naturally, and you find success in doing that, right? And that's how you start your career. As you start to get good at things, it's because you're doing. As you start to grow in your leadership positions, it's a lot more about either influencing others to do something that's one of your goals and objectives, right? That's in behalf of the company, or it's about delegating. And that delegation is all about empowerment. So building a team that's empowered with guardrails is all about success as you get bigger, because you can't scale. What you could do yourself at a lower position in the company when you didn't have as much responsibility, you can keep your arms around it. And we talked about this in the board meeting as well, right? As Rosendin continues to scale, you have to build your infrastructure and that level of delegation differently so that you can still be successful, because you can't keep your arms around all those variables as your responsibility grows.
Did you find to influence people or to delegate to be harder?
Oh, for sure it's to influence people to be harder, because, let's face it, in an organization, each area has their own goals built in. So it's about finding that intersection of the goals to be able to influence and really explaining to people why what you're asking them to do is important for the bigger picture and for the company in general. Once people understand why and why it's so important, then they typically get on board very quickly. But there are competing interests in any business just because of the way it's set up and how the goals are distributed.
So Dee, as a leader in your organization, what are you doing differently to drive change and promote inclusion and diversity? And are there any leadership principles that guide you in doing so?
Yeah, so if I look at, just my career, I started off in, I was in very male-dominated businesses at the time, and there's been a lot of change in those businesses, but they were pretty dominated. Engineering, anything technology, anything manufacturing is going to be very male dominated. So, at first it was about, how do you become successful? And then at some point you sit back and you go, well, how am I helping the next generation that's coming after me? If this was this hard for me, right, how do I take out some of those speed bumps, I call them, for others coming through? So if I look at that, certainly I had, mentoring for quite a long time. But I would say in the last, 15, 16 years, it's been more around, equipping some of the women in the business with different tools, getting them different training that will help them succeed in their careers. It's about building a network for them. So when I was at ABB, I founded the women's networking group in my division. And that was all about providing those tools, but also visibility to the talent in the organization. And then, making people aware. And so I think, that combination of things, and I've taken that combination of things throughout different organizations at Dematic as well today. And then I think, people like Axelle and I have a bit of a responsibility then to ask some of the questions in some of those smaller forums, like, well, what are you doing about diversity, and what are you doing to change the way that you're hiring, to open up the field to more people, to more candidates, to see if you can increase the funnel in your organization, and just being a voice for those that don't necessarily have a voice in those forums today.
Yeah, I agree. And the only thing I would add is it's not because we're women that we're not biased. Right. And so I think as a leader, continuously checking our own unconscious bias and making sure we walk that walk, right, is important too. And to bringing it up, I think that's where data can really help. I see a lot of people say, no, we don't have an issue. We have, it becomes emotional. Then you find the data, you find the hiring, you find the attrition, you find the promotion. And it's like, so explain this.
Yeah,
now.
the data speaks
This
for.
data speaks for itself. And so removing the emotion out of those discussions to have, a true data-driven discussion is important, and also aligning on the goals.
How should women support other women in an organization? Like, what would be your tips or tricks?
You touched on some of that, right? The mentoring, the networking, the giving the tools. I think it's important. And back to what you said, is like bringing it up continuously behind closed doors, making sure
That people are looking at everything.
And at everyone. So,
Right.
What do you do for free time outside of work to come to work mentally stronger to tackle what comes your way? We'll send that your way, Dee.
I like to be outdoors a lot, so I live on the coast. I like to kayak. If I'm in North Carolina, every morning I get up somewhere between 5 and 5:30 and walk for a few miles on the beach, usually with one of those arm extenders for my dog, because she likes to go catch and fetch balls a lot. So I like to be outside and anything like that. We do a lot of hiking vacations as a family, that kind of thing. That's how I unwind.
So you were talking earlier, we were talking previous to sitting out here about a book that you wrote.
I did publish a book recently. So I decided the place that I call home in North Carolina is kind of a very special place. It's a place that was developed, it's residential, but it was really developed with sustainability in mind back in the late 50s, right? So really ahead of its time in terms of valuing the environment and what's special about it. So I decided that, for my future grandchildren, which I do not have, that I wanted them to understand what was so special about the place that my husband and I decided to build our forever home on. And so I wrote a book about that.
Wow, that is awesome.
It involved a lot of research, I can tell you.
share the title so everybody knows where to find it.
And she showed me some beautiful pictures, so it was amazing. Axelle, what does success in your career look like to you?
That's a good one.
That's a hard one.
It's a hard one. And it's actually changed a lot over the years. I think it was much more just career before, and now it's much more balance between career and everything else around. But interestingly, it's not, I want a certain title or I want a certain pay. And I find a lot of people who just go after that don't necessarily get there. So what I look at is the intersect of what am I good at? What do I enjoy doing? And what will people pay for? And I think if you find the intersect of those three, you'll do something that you love, that you're good at, you'll get compensated for it, and then your career will take off from that.
Yeah. I think doing something you love is key.
It is.
Who or what has been your biggest influence or inspiration, and why? We'll start with you, Axelle.
Yeah, it's a what, it's not a who. About a decade ago, overnight, I became a solo parent. Single mom, no dad around, no family around. And I had to completely rethink my life. Like everything I was doing, it wasn't going to work. And you'd think, oh, single mom, that you're gonna fail at everything. And it's actually what launched me much more in my career and be much more thoughtful about what you love and so on. And I learned three things pretty quickly. The first one is time is very limited. So spend your time on what matters. And the rest is not that important. So for me, it was my daughter and my career because I was a sole income for all of that. The second piece is around betting on yourself. So if I had limited time, I didn't have time to do the groceries list at night, wash the house and take care of the garden and do all of that. And so the betting on myself was to say, I'm going to outsource that. And it's okay, I'll have $0 at the end of the month. We'll eat a lot of pasta. But I'm betting that if I outsource these things, what I'm going to spend my time on is going to bring back rewards over time. I am going to succeed. So that's a big bet, like all chips on red. And then the third piece is energy is actually key. Because I'm sure we've all had those days you arrive at the end of the day and you're exhausted and you don't want to deal with whatever's happening at home. Or you had such a busy weekend or a crisis at home and then you have no energy for work. And so you can expend time, you can expend energy. So what are the things that give you energy? And that's where doing what you love at work makes a huge difference. Because then you finish the day, you're energized, you still have energy when you go home, right? And the things that take energy away from you, just get rid of them. They're not important. And so that time, which was extremely hard and like a big recipe for failure, turned out to be the best thing that happened to me.
You were successful.
Yeah, it worked out.
Awesome. How about you, Dee?
Yeah, so I would say there's so many, I'll go to the people part. There's so many people that have influenced me. I've had, fantastic mentors over time. I've had people that I can watch. So I typically will always look, even in a meeting, today, I'll look and see who's been effective and who hasn't. And what did the people do that were effective and what were the people that weren't effective, what did they do? And so I'm constantly checking on myself for how can I be better. But probably the biggest influencers were my two daughters. And I, was always striving to, would they be proud of saying, my mom did this today, or my mom did this year, or my mom is doing that. And so they were my biggest influence.
That was one of the things that kept me going when I was in project management, was when you'd hear your kids, I had daughters too, my mom built that, and that was amazing to hear them say that. It made you feel really good.
My daughter was like, my mom is saving the internet. I was like, oh, that's a good way to look at cybersecurity. I like it.
So our final question that we have, and then we'll go to the audience for any additional questions, is what advice would you give to the next generation of women leaders? And we'll start with you, Dee.
So my advice to the next generation would be to have confidence in yourself, to take some chances. Even if you're not 100% sure that you're going to succeed in what you're doing, really take that chance and put yourself out there, because that's when you learn the most. When you're really not sure, look to others in the organization to help you. Pick your own mentors. It doesn't have to be a formal mentoring program. You go pick out, who's successful, who can help you. You go pick out your mentors and you seek out that advice. And then the last one is be authentic. If you try to pretend you're somebody else, you're not going to come off as being authentic and trustworthy. And if you're not trustworthy, you won't be successful.
Yeah. You can't keep that up for very long if you're not yourself.
And mine is actually along those same lines, is play by your own rules. Or not any of us, we all look different, right? And so you can see someone who's very successful, they're, doing things a certain way. If it's not you, you're never going to be successful doing it the way they're doing it. So define what your own game, your own excellence is, and go after being the best at that. And defining your own rules, to me, is what brings success, not trying to be someone else.
Yeah. Being, like you said, your authentic self.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that kind of wraps up the questions we have down. Does anybody in the audience have any questions?
I'll ask a question. What piece of advice are you glad you didn't take?
Didn't take?
Yeah, didn't.
Oh, lots of it. Like, you can't be an engineer, you should go into biology. It's better for women, or I don't know. There's been so many.
So many. I would have trouble even answering that. I think that, people advise you, you've got little kids at home, you probably shouldn't do this. You've got little kids at home, you probably won't want that job that makes you have to go see customers and be on the road. I think those are terrible pieces of advice, and people aren't doing it necessarily. Some people are, but the majority of people aren't doing it out of being unkind. They're doing it because from their point of view, they really believe that you should be home and that that's the best place for you to be. And, I tried my first retirement, I tried to be home. I did. I had a little baby, I tried to be home, and I was not good at it. I wasn't happy. And so that's not good for my baby if I'm not happy. I went back to work. Got a great nanny, went back to work. I was happy. I spent more time with my kids on the floor playing games with them and reading to them and everything else than a lot of people did that were stay-at-home moms. I had great quality with my kids.
Quality, not quantity.
Quality, but I was happy. And so even if people come to you from a good spot, you really have to check it on yourself and say, am I going to be happy if I take that advice? And if you come back with a no, trust your instincts. It's a no.
Follow your heart. Follow what it's saying to you. I was saying that when I won the Woman of Influence Award, they wanted me to get up on the stage and have like a little mantra. And like my mantra was, they said I couldn't, so I did. Right? So when people say you can't do something, you need to like look inside and say, can I do this? And if you think you can, go for it.
And you said your mother
said my mother
no
said,
surprise.
You're right. My mother said that you've been doing that since you were born. Anybody else?
I've got a question. As the two female board members on the Rosendin Holdings board, and not coming from Rosendin, but being from the outside, do you feel that the rest of the board listens to the input that you're providing and takes action based off that?
Absolutely, 100%.
Not a doubt.
It is a group of people that strives to get input from different areas. And in fact, there have been times where either Axelle or I will say something that's completely contrary to the rest of the discussion, and the room just goes silent. And it's like, well, hold on a second. We wouldn't have thought about it that way. And then why are you saying that? And so it is a very open group. The leaders that are on the executive committee and on the board are just very curious. They're very humble, and they're always seeking to build their own knowledge. And they have a lot. I mean, they're very impressive people in and amongst themselves, but they're always looking to learn and to grow. Do you agree with that?
Oh, completely.
And from an executive that doesn't sit in any of the board meetings, the people that I talk to that sit in the board meetings outside of the board meetings respect these two women greatly and their opinions. So I think that.
Thank you.
I have a question. You talked about, as you went through your careers and people telling you couldn't do it, how did you find that motivation to keep going and not giving up and to continue to strive to get to where you are now?
I happen to be a little bit competitive, as it turns out. I played a lot of sports in my life. And for me, if somebody says, you can't do that or you're not going to be good at that, if I look at my life lessons that I learned as a kid, it takes practice. And, in the game of business, it's all about practice. And it's all about who you can look at to learn from. So if you play on a team and you want to be the best person on the team, that's great. You're probably not going to learn a lot. But if you want to go to that team that's a little bit better, ranked a little bit higher, you're going to have a lot of people you can learn from. And so as a kid, I played sports with boys. So there were some girls' teams, And I played with them too. But I played with the boys because when I played with them, they were faster and stronger, so I had to be smarter. And that's how I always challenged myself through business as well as, okay, well, how would I approach this problem and can I solve it a different way, a better way? So that's me in kind of a nutshell.
I agree. I play sports and have kind of that competitive spirit too. I think there is a part also of, if you look at a massive goal, this is where I want to be in 10 years. To me, that's very unsurmountable in a way. But you look at, okay, what do I need to do this week? What do I need to do today? And then take the little wins, like one by one on the way, right? And that's what resilience is at the end of the day, is say, okay, this is really hard right now, but I know I can get there one step at a time. So pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and just keep going. It will get there.
Angie, you want to answer the same one?
I mean, for me, I guess it would probably be a little bit of the competition, just because when I first started at Rosendin, there was no women in any position of I guess, authority or management. And so being the first woman project manager and then the first woman division manager, and then, it was always a challenge to be, and it was always really great to move to the next level and then turn around and see that there was 3 more, right, behind me, 3 more women behind me that were now doing that. So I think that for me, it's always been like, if I keep breaking that barrier and moving to the next level, then that opens the door for everyone behind me.
It's a bit of a trailblazer.
Yeah.
That's right.
What would you guys recommend people to do first for those who are looking for their who or their what? Like, how would you guide them towards finding that purpose, so to speak?
You want to take that one?
You want it?
You got it.
Let me think about it.
I know, that's a hard, you have hard questions.
That's true. I changed career 3 times. I changed goals for my life 6 times, and none of the things I had in mind is what I end up doing. So, and I think at the end of the day, it's okay. I used to be like, I feel like everybody else has a plan, a grand plan, and they know their aspirations and what they're going to do. Today, I changed it to something a little bit simpler. It's like, did I have a positive influence today? Like, just take it very simple. And I think if you try to do the right thing, have the right action, have a positive impact. Like, again, maybe I'm fairly basic, but I take things like one step at a time, one day at a time. So I'm not sure I find my whole who or what, except I want to be aligned with that value of positive impact day by day.
I would say start with the why first. Why do you want to do, and then you can figure out the what and the how and the who, right? But figure out the why and start there. And once you have the why, then you can figure out how. And then once you figure out the how, then you can look and see people that are going to help you get there.
Yeah. But it's okay if you don't have it figured out all the way.
I don't even know it.
To me, it's been very much, I think there is the why, but there is also following your heart. It's back to, what do you love? What gives you energy? What's, gets you out of bed in the morning? Had that discussion with a friend. It's like, is there something that even on the Monday morning, you say, yes, it's Monday morning. I can't wait to do it. And if you found that, you're on the right path. Like, keep going.
Most of us here lead teams. I found as I've grown as a manager that my team feeds off of my energy. When you have teams, how do you motivate your teams? How do you keep them motivated to be your best, and in turn they're their best?
So for me, it's about having clear aligned objectives and and distilling them down into bite-sized pieces. So a little bit of what Axelle has been saying, like if it's so ominous to get from where you are to where you need to go, it's your responsibility to make those bite-sized chunks digestible. And then empowerment, right? So if you have, because a lot of people have a group of people that work together, for me it's really important to have a team. And if everyone's aligned on what those objectives are and they're achievable, then and empowered, then you're going to be successful. And when you are successful, you celebrate the heck out of it. And that is like a flywheel, because everybody wants to be successful and everyone wants to make an impact. So the minute you can align that team and hire people better than you, right? Don't be afraid to hire people better than you, because you will be successful so much faster by just putting your ego aside and not having to be the best at every single thing, right? It's all about getting a really talented team and then letting them loose, but aligned, guardrails, right? There have to be guardrails, but let them go.
I think making sure everybody has a voice on your team. I think that people like to be able to say things and be heard and have everybody respect what they have to say. And everybody doesn't always have to say what I say. You know, sometimes you get the people that are like, oh, well, she said she'd go right, so we all should go right. No, if somebody thinks we should go left, then let's go left. And to allow them to have that opportunity to speak up and have their opinion, I think goes a long way for your team, that you actually listen to them and respect that they have those opinions.
And I would say behind that, explain the decisions, explain the directions, right? We all love when we know why things are happening. It's not because I said so. It's because we're going together towards that incredible future, right? And these are the things that we need to do to get there. So you got to speak both to the hearts and the minds, I think, of people in your team.
Are there any organizations or training classes that you've taken that you thought helped develop you into the leader that you are today?
Definitely. I'm a big believer of continuous education. I remember first time I was given a team, I was like, oh, to who? And $1 million budget? Really? So my manager back then could see the fear and panic in my eyes. And so she's like, you know, UC Berkeley has evening classes around team leadership, program management. I was like, okay, sign me up. And so I did that as just evening classes in the, it helped tremendously. It wasn't only the classes, it was also my peers and having a group of people to talk through those issues. And then later on I did an MBA, and I'm still, every now and then taking classes or listening to podcasts. So I think those more formal trainings are important. But some of the best lessons I've had have actually also comes from, we always think about mentors, but I've learned a lot from my peers or sometimes from people working for me. They're like, you did this, but that, and it's like, everybody sees it from a different perspective. So back to curiosity, I think being open to all those lessons we get along the way.
I agree, 100%. There's classes, there's, now a lot, it's online, it's really accessible. But you can learn a lot from your peers and from people who work for you. When you start to hire in people that are better than you of stuff, the first P&L role that I had, I knew nothing about operations, right? I had been in R&D, engineering, and business development. And all of a sudden overnight, I was, the proud mother, if you will, of 5 different facilities and I was moving a bunch of production from one facility a couple thousand miles away to another one. And I thought, really? Well, this is going to be an exciting ride for everyone. Buckle up. And, but I had a great operations guy who came along with one of the acquisitions, and he sat down and taught me everything I needed to know. And once I had that baseline, then I had the confidence to go and learn more and more and more. So it's about being humble enough to learn from everyone in the organization, because somebody's better than you at something.
Yeah. I think just try.
Yeah.
I see many women who say, oh, I don't have all the qualifications, so I'm not going to try. All right, and the learning here is like, you didn't have them, I didn't have them. And it's like, okay. And so have that confidence.
That's right.
To just try and learn and get there.
But in those environments, I think to one of the earlier questions, that's when you learn so much. When you stretch yourself into being uncomfortable, you learn at such a fast rate, because you're really building your own knowledge and you're learning how to overcome and figure out how to be successful when things aren't quite handed to you and in your sweet spot, if you will.
Well, there's nothing wrong with asking questions and not knowing something. I think that sometimes we think that if we say we don't know something, then we're showing that we're weak in something, and that we don't want people to think that we don't know that. But we can't know everything, right? So at some point we do have to ask. And, I'm big on always wanting to have that person that, if I had to vacate tomorrow, could take my spot. I'm not worried about them taking my spot. I'm worried about having that person trained up to take my spot. And so I think that that just doing that, and I read a lot of books, or I shouldn't say I read a lot of books. I listen to a lot of books in the car or on a plane or whatever. I've been to several different leadership programs, and I think that they help, and you resonate with certain parts of, you don't resonate with everything that's in them. I think I log onto or grab onto a certain parts of each different one. Just like my management style doesn't mimic any one manager I've had. I think I've taken little pieces from all different managers to become the person I am. So I think that it's really peers, and even people say you be a good mentor. I think sometimes when I mentor people, I get mentored by them. The mentee is mentoring, because I just think you learn a lot more. Like, you get more input from just talking with people and sharing.
I had a question. You referenced the glass ceiling earlier and mentioned that it was still present, perhaps thinning, but still present. In your opinion, what can we do as a company, as an industry, and as male managers to continue to progress on finding a way to completely remove that barrier?
Funny, we had a discussion on this week. I think one big thing, right, is to challenge as you're looking for, let's take one example. As you're looking for talent to bring into the business, a lot of times, I've heard leaders in, different businesses say, well, I need someone with 15 years of experience in this, right? So don't bring me anyone that doesn't have 15 years in this little box. And in environments where you already have a very small number of diverse people in that industry, if you put that box around that job that you want, then you're only going to fish in the pond that has that experience. If rather you say, I want somebody with these competencies and these capabilities, and I want somebody who can lead in these areas, you now open up different people that can come and now be part of the funnel that you're now choosing your candidate from. And because you have a lot of experts in those areas already. So do you really need everyone to be an expert, or do you really need people to lead in certain areas or to bring other perspectives from other industries? And if you start to think like that, I think you will start to see different candidates. And as you see those different candidates, there'll be things that pique your curiosity. Well, wait a second. How did you leverage that in this other job? And all of a sudden, now you become even richer as an organization because you're bringing different perspectives into the business.
And I don't think that, I think that our industry can be taught, right? So I don't think that that somebody has to have a project management degree or come up from in the field and be an electrician to be able to be a project manager or be something, a division manager or whatever that they work their way to. I mean, I started by coming in to take a receptionist job, right? So I knew nothing. I don't even have a college degree background, right? So I didn't have any of that. I think that you just have to be humble and want to learn. And so you need to look for people that are maybe in your group that don't have those skills, so that maybe they don't know how to read a one line perfectly, right? But they have the ability to want to learn that, and they have the ability to want to challenge themselves to learn those things. And I think if you find those traits or those characteristics, we need to focus more on the traits and the characteristics that will make a good person, and we can teach them and mentor them for the stuff that we need to know in our business.
Obviously, ambition and success and your competitive nature come with compromises and sacrifices. In your personal life, did you ever have to draw that line to, hey, I'm not going to sacrifice or compromise this in my personal life to help me achieve my goals in my professional life?
Completely. For sure. Yeah, I was a solo parent. I've been a solo parent for most of the past decade, and there is no way I'm going to outsource raising my daughter. I want to spend time with her. I want to be there with her when she was little. I picked jobs where I didn't have to be on the road because I wanted to be home every evening, or like 90% of the evenings for her. And then it's changed, but like at no point did I want to sacrifice her or the relationship we had. That was very important. So it changed the roles I took, it changed the speed at which I grew, the locations of where I looked at jobs. But at the end of the day, my career still took off. And I think it's very important to really make sure what matters to you. I think we all have a tendency to spread ourselves too thin, right? And I felt I had to do fewer sacrifices when I was so clear on the fact that she was my priority, my job was going to be my priority. Life was very simple. So, yeah, define what matters the most to you, and success will still come if you're true to that.
I think just finding that balance. I mean, I think sometimes, we think, okay, the inbox isn't empty, right? So I have to stay. There's more things I need to do. But you'll find the next day that inbox still has more stuff in it, and every day it's going to still have more stuff. And it's just, what do I need to prioritize at work? And then what do I need to prioritize at home? I couldn't, like Dee, I couldn't stay home. I mean, after 2 weeks of vacation with my family, I can't wait to get back to work. And it's not because I don't enjoy being with my family. That's just, I need some other stimulation in my life than just to be a mom, right? And so, but I enjoyed being a mom. I was a Girl Scout leader. I was the team mom for volleyball, all of those things. And yes, it was a run ragged day, get to work at 6, get out of there by 4. And I probably put myself through more to be able to do it all. My mom will be like, your schedule is so crazy. Even now, like, she thinks my schedule's crazy. But it works for me, and it worked for my kids. They were in daycare from 6 in the morning to 6 at night, and sometimes I had to pay extra because I was 15 minutes late to pick them up. But they're all successful now. Like, they didn't suffer from it. I don't think they would say that they suffered from it. They're all in college. They all are out working in the world. And there's nothing I haven't looked back in my whole career and been like, I feel guilty that I didn't do or that I did. I think that it's worked out for me. I think you just have to find that place.
But one thing is, looking back, or when we talk about this, years later, it looks good and like we had it figured out and under control. Truth of the matter is, imagine a car when you're on two wheels trying to take a turn and you're skidding at the same time. And there's been days where my daughter's school is closed. I have a meeting with my CEO. I'm meeting with the board. She's coming with me. I'm giving her tons of crayons. Like a colleague, back to peers, is, taking her to eat pancakes. Or I remember being on a business trip to Denver, being caught in a complete snowstorm, airport closed for 3 days. And you're like, okay, calling friends. It's like it gets very messy.
There are times where my husband and I, we had a rule. We couldn't both be up in the air at the same time. Right? These are rules in my house, okay? You can't both be up in the air. So we would meet, we lived in Boston, and we would meet in central parking, and we'd be calling on our phones. Where are you? What level are you at? Because you had to physically see somebody before you could go get on your plane. I mean, and if you didn't put your trip in on the calendar that hung on the door in the kitchen, you could have told the other person, but if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't count. So you had to, it was, as you say, it was chaos. But it was our chaos, and we made it work.
And it doesn't work every day, but if you aggregate it over a week or over a month, and you're like, hey, this month was pretty good. Let's exclude like the 5, 6, 7 days. I was like, okay, let's try the next month. All right, so be ready to tilt the priorities every now and then.
When you feel that your time's up here with Rosendin on the board, retirement, whatever it may be, what would you like your legacy to be?
I would say for me, it's about building the next succession of leaders, right? Am I leaving whatever business I'm touching better than how I came? And the same thing with being a role model for my daughters, right? If they have a better experience because of what I've done, then that's fantastic. That's all I can ask for, and that they don't say, my mother wasn't here, because I always made it home for their birthdays. It was not always pretty, but I always made it home for their birthdays. Sometimes it was 11:59 at night, and I woke them up and said, happy birthday, and ran into bed. But I always made it home, and it's those small things. Like I want the people that I've touched, both in business and in my personal life, to say, I left it better than how I found it.
I agree.
Yeah, I think for me it's just looking back and being able to give back. Like one of the things I really enjoy about some of the stuff I can do now is be a part of giving back. Like go to an event where there's college kids and explain, how great it is to be in this industry and some of the things that go with it, or going to an industry event where I'm talking to a person who is a woman who owns a $30 million a year electrical contracting company and be able to give her some tips and tricks that might make her business better. So those things, like just being able to give back and see that. And of course, my daughters are big, like wanting them to say I've done a good job with them, and that they learned a lot. Thank you guys.
Well, that wraps up our roundtable, and I want to thank everybody again for attending and talking about the future of Rosendin. As I said in the beginning, I'm really excited about where we're going and what we're doing. I'm really excited about our board members and who we have. Dee and Axelle, Angie, working with them. This was a really great experience. I enjoyed it. I hope everybody that watched this enjoys it and gets something out of it. Again, we have a very, very bright future ahead of us. The things we're doing with our board, the things we're doing at the executive level, and most importantly, those of you that are working every day in a job site trailer, we're working for you, and hopefully these things bring something for you to carry forward in your careers and your daily activities. So thank you, and I hope to see you all again very, very soon. Be safe.